Welcome to the Next Level Life podcast with Christine Corcoran. This podcast is made for the powerhouse businesswomen who are ready to ignite their fullest potential. This is where we will dive deep into the mindset breakthroughs and sprinkle in some kick up the butt motivation so you can scale your business with confidence and clarity. Whether you're craving more income, impact, or inspiration, this podcast will be your ultimate resource for all things next level. Listen in as we have authentic conversations with game-changing female entrepreneurs as we reveal the secrets on what it takes to rise and thrive. So go ahead, ignite your inner fire, and let's get you taking massive aligned action. Are you ready to elevate? Let's go. Welcome to the next episode of the Next Level Life podcast. So excited that you're here. I really want to talk to you today about scaling your way. Do you feel like you're at the stage of business where you want to start focusing on scaling, and maybe you've been in business a few years and it's time now to take things up a notch? Well, I want to talk to you about learning to scale your way, because what I see is often people trying to replicate scaling models that they see that everyone else is doing. And one of the biggest things that I'm learning through my beautiful Next Level Mastermind and supporting them to scale is you've got to find your own authentic way of scaling. So when I think about doing this and what I support my ladies to do is there's a couple of key pieces. The first one is knowing your values. You need to know what is important to you and how you want to live your life. So you're creating a business and you're scaling that business in a way that feels authentic to you. You cannot just adopt a random scaling model that other people are doing and try to make it your own. You've got to do it your way. There's certain things with this, like your visibility strengths. So knowing what your strengths are and how you can show up and scale through visibility, whether that's your ability to speak well, whether it's your ability to write well, whether it's your ability to connect with people, finding what is your strength and going with that and finding an authentic way to go about doing it. With my experience in so many different types of businesses, I have the ability to be able to look at a business from a different set of eyes and to be able to see what may work for you and what may not. And one of those is uncovering, one, your values, and two, figuring out what's important for you and your timeline. One of the unfortunate things that I see is people trying to scale based on the timelines that they're seeing other people scale online without knowing whether that's fully true. Because one of the hard things about social media is that you don't get to see behind the scenes, you don't get to see the timeline of how long it took for them to scale, and you don't get to see the ins and outs of what that looks like behind the scenes. So you might be comparing yourself to someone else that doesn't have the time constraints that you have. They may not even have a family, they may not have other issues or challenges within their life that cause them to only have a certain amount of time to work on their business. So one of the things I always get my ladies to consider is what their timeline is on scaling. Because setting yourself up to fail, like I'm going to scale in 3 months' time, is probably going to set you up to feel terrible about yourself. And it's also unrealistic. It is unrealistic unless you are going to invest a hell of a lot of money into marketing and making sure that you're advertising, getting in front of the right audiences, increasing your visibility, and making sure that you have every little piece working well for you. You've got to make sure that your offer is super viable. You've got to make sure that there's a market out there for your offer. You've got to test the offer. You've got to nail that offer and make sure that it delivers on the results that you promise, right? There's so many factors that go into play. And I think sometimes it can get super overwhelming and people can get so down on themselves and can be so hard on themselves because they're setting themselves up to fail because they're comparing themselves to someone else who did things a different way. So when it comes to scaling your way, you want to consider your values. You want to consider your time constraints and your timeline. So you want to create a realistic timeline. And look, I'm not always the one to say realistic timeline because I do believe in magic and I do believe in manifestation and quantum leaps, and you can create amazing results quicker than what you sometimes expect. But I think if you're going out there with the expectation that you're going to scale and have a multi-six or a 7-figure business within a few months' time, then and you don't have the audience and you don't have the offers ready, like the first time you're running it, like you may be setting yourself up to fail. So I'm just being realistic in that space. And I think that if you set the goal, love it, like set the goal, work towards it. But if you don't meet it, don't beat yourself up about it, right? Learn from it, develop what you need to develop, improve and implement what you need to implement, and then keep working towards scaling because it might take a couple of years. The other thing I consider is there's multiple different types of scaling models. So this is why I always think about your authenticity first. I think about your visibility strengths. I look into your values, look at your timeline to determine what is the best type of model for you, because you may want to scale lots of different ways. Now, you may not have any capital to put behind you to maximize your scaling, and that's okay. You don't necessarily have to, but you do definitely need to invest back in your business. So you might need to improve your systems. You may need to work on customer service. You may need to employ more team. Like there might be multiple different things that you need to set up in your business in order for you to have the capacity to bring in more customers. So there's so many factors. And I think sometimes what can happen is that we get so caught up on just sticking to one model instead of allowing it to be a blend of all models, really, and finding a way that feels really good for you. Now I've had clients before where they've had a lot of capital to back them, and they actually raised capital to back themselves, and then they validated the offer, they put it out to the market, they tested it first, and then once they nailed it, that's where they backed it with a whole bunch of money to get lots of eyes on the offer in order to sell at a higher rate, right? They were able to scale a lot faster than some of my clients that don't have the income, right? Don't have the profit to be able to then put a whole bunch of money in, or they don't want to necessarily scale super fast because they know that their business doesn't have the capacity to take on that many people. So, because I see the other challenge with is some people scale too fast and then it really ruins their business because they either have their reputation wrapped against hot coals because they aren't able to fulfill their orders, or they aren't able to service people well, and people get annoyed because they've been promoting this offer and they don't have the capacity to take them on board. So you want to really consider that. So it might be scaling in phases, and that's the way I really look at it, because you need to make sure that the foundations are good first, and you need to make sure that you've got the great offer, viable offer, it's profitable, like all the pieces first to begin with need to be good before you can then put money behind it, test it, and then get it out to the market and then push it, right? So you'll have different phases of scaling. So I want you to think about what's important to you when it comes to scaling, because some people might be like, well, I want to go hard and fast, right? And they want to scale fast, and they're willing to put money behind it, and they're willing to do all the work, and they've got the hours, they've got the time to do that. Other people might be like, well, actually, I don't want to sacrifice my time with my family, so I'm happy just to slow the process down a little bit. I'm still going to put in all the work, and I'm still going to put a little bit of money behind it, but I'm also not going to expect that I'm going to turn it around in 3 or 6 months because maybe the kids are young and I want to spend time with them. So I'm going to work towards building the business organically, or, in a slower pace. So then when I'm ready to go, once the kids, hit high school, then I'm ready to go and I've got more time, then I can do that. Or you might find that you have less time available. Maybe you've got other obligations and the timeline is even further out, right? So that way I would even suggest that you simplify your business even more. Instead of trying to focus on multiple things, you focus on just one, you nail that one thing, and then you work on scaling it slowly, right? And let it be in a slow manner. And that's where you've got to be super careful not to compare yourself to anybody else, right? You're running your own race and making sure it's in alignment with what feels good for you. So there are a few different ways that you can scale your business, okay? So firstly is obviously raising your prices, first and foremost, right? So you want to make sure firstly that your offer is profitable, and you also may have the opportunity to raise your prices. So you may actually work on your brand or your company's brand in order to be able to be seen at a higher luxury price point. So then you can actually start charging more. So that might take time to really develop that brand. You may need to really focus on visibility with PR. You may need to really develop your ideal client and make sure that you're able to scale based on price, right? So that can work for so many different types of business, but it just takes a little bit of time to really develop that brand. That's why brand is so important, because it can actually dictate your pricing. So if you are extremely well known and you add lots and lots of value to your audience, and you've developed a community, and you have a really high demand, then again, you can raise your prices, right? And that's through brand. So that might be the first place that you start, that you go, okay, so how can I create my brand and really elevate my brand so I can start charging well? And then you raise your prices. Another way could be through products. So whether you're a service-based business or a product-based business, then you may decide that you want to actually elevate in product. So again, the profit margin is going to have to be nailed otherwise, and same with the price point, because product price points are really key, and so you want to nail that really well. Again, test and measure with the market, and once you've got it right, then you can do some really amazing marketing strategies to start scaling. But again, you need to make sure that you've got the capacity, because if you don't have a fulfillment center, if you don't have the team to pack the orders, then that can also be an issue. So you've also got to get your stock levels right. So stock is one of the biggest killers of business, especially dead stock on shelves is one of the biggest killers skills when it comes to a product-based business. So you need to nail your ordering properly, so then you're able to scale without having heaps of dead stock sitting on the shelf. Because let's say that you create a product line and it's got 15 to 20 different SKUs, but only 8 of those SKUs actually sell, then you've got all this extra stock sitting on the shelf that you can't do anything with, and you're probably going to have to sell at a discounted rate, right? So stock is a huge key component when it comes to scaling and staying profitable and not losing your marbles. And so you really want to think about whether you want to get a product. Now, there's so many different ways that I also see service-based businesses go into the product-based business too. And where this can go wrong is sometimes where they under order or they pre-order. So they make to order, it's kind of the same thing, or they only do it in small drops. So that sometimes can work if you're creating urgency, but sometimes it actually really annoys customers. Like there's one store that I've been wanting to buy a dress from for ages, and every time I go look online, they don't have my size. And I'm like, I'm just not going to buy from you anymore. Like I'm sick of jumping online and not getting the dopamine hit of being like, yay, they have my size and I want to buy, right? And hitting that buy button. That can annoy people. So you've got to really get like your sizing and all of that type of stuff right if you're a clothing business. And so there's so many different variables. And I think sometimes that if you scale too fast in a product-based business, it can be really damaging. But for a service-based business, adding a product to your repertoire could be really perfect for your business to scale it, right? Because it's something that is taking away from time. So if you're in a service-based business and you're constantly stuck in the time versus money trap, then adding a product could be a really great way to be extra profitable. Otherwise, then obviously you've got to go to the stage of one-to-many services, right? Now, one-to-many services can be anything from a course, a program, a mastermind, a workshop, an event. Like there's so many different forms of one-to-many, and it's just figuring out what's the right fit for your business and what feels right for you. And then again, it's coming back to how are we going to scale this and what's the purpose of the scale and how are we going to do it our way authentically and how are we going to do it from a place that allows us to live into our values. Because if you go and tie yourself into a business where you're stuck on Zoom 24/7, you're probably going to hate it, right? So you want to be conscious of that. So you need to make sure that your scaling goals are in alignment with your values. Otherwise, you'll end up getting to the point where you get burnt out or you lock yourself into contracts that don't serve you, right? And you get stuck. The other thing I see as well, like depending on like the type of business that you have, you need to determine as you're scaling, are you scaling as a company or is you scaling as an individual, like a personal brand? Because what your long-term goal is needs to be in alignment with that. So if you want to walk away from the business or you want to sell the business down the track in 5-10 years time, then you want to consider that right now because you might end up creating the business too much around you and then it's much harder to sell. Right? And so you want to be conscious of that. So it's really thinking about the long-term goals, how you want your lifestyle to be in that 10-year, 20-year mark, how much time that you want to be investing in the business at that point, and what will your involvement be in the business at that point, and then just reverse engineer it. Right? So you reverse engineer it and that'll allow you to create a business that feels super in alignment with scaling it your way. Okay, lots to consider there, I'm sure. If you feel like you are at that point in business where you would love to scale and you'd love help with it, then the Next Level Mastermind is definitely for you. This is where we scale your way and I help you create that authenticity and align your mindset and your values with your business as you scale. So if you're ready to go one-to-many and you're in a service-based business, then definitely come check out the Next Level Mastermind. The link is in the show notes and feel free to reach out to me if you'd like to have a chat to determine whether it's the right fit for you. All right, lovely. Have an amazing week. Thank you for listening, and if you've found any value out of this episode, make sure you hit the follow button so you get access to the episodes as soon as they are live, and make sure you come hang out with me on Instagram. You can find me at ChristineCorcoran_coach. Have an incredible week.